Schools would like to get rid of student cell phones. Guess who's stopping that? And it's not the students. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal about, started out, Steve, in a rural school district in Colorado where they tried to ban smartphones and the parents stood in the way. The parents want the kids to have smartphones at school. Now, this is probably one of those okay boomer topics, but I think it brings up some fascinating issues. Obviously, to reminisce just a little bit, Steve, and because I'm so much older than you, when I was in school, if I needed to make a phone call, there was a payphone that was just outside in front of the main entrance of the school, and I could walk outside and I could put money in the phone in the form of hard currency, and I could call my grandmother if I needed to have somebody come pick me up, and then she would wait until my grandfather got home from work hours later and could send him to pick me up because we had one car. But anyway, now every kid has a phone, practically, and schools are finding they're having problems, Steve, in class. You've got young kids. I'm sure you have a better pulse on this than I do. But they're having problems not only with distractions like kids, watching TikTok in school, but kids taking photos in the bathroom, cyberbullying things that are going on through texting and other kinds of applications where they're sending threatening or intimidating messages. Steve, it's not a simple question, is it? When you say, because parents should be in charge of their own children, right? And you send them to the government-run school, basically. Should the government-run school be able to say, no, we're going to take away this phone that mom gave you while you're here because we need you to stay focused and we don't want you to be taunting your fellow classmates?
Yeah, it's not an easy issue, and I have to approach it as a parent because I am one. But before we get to that, Scott, you reminded me of something I haven't thought of in a long time, which was the sheer entertainment value of having a payphone at school in a lobby where nobody could really hear you because two friends of mine and I'm not going to change any names because there's no need to protect the innocent. None of us were at all innocent in this. David Dickinson and David Montani, there's the two Daves and the one Steve. We discovered that for the price of a quarter that they would refund you. You could call international operators anywhere in the world and harass them with strange requests. We just finished reading Lord of the Flies. This must be 8th or 9th grade. And one of the characters at the very end of the book introduces himself to the rescue people, and he had this very, very British name. And we decided he must have been working by now for the British consulate in Agra, India. So we called the operator in Agra, India, to try and get the British consulate on the phone and stuff like that. We actually placed a call to Moscow. This would have been like 84, 85, Cold War days, wow. Asking for the number for Alya Nidislov. We were just jerk kids having fun for a quarter that we would get back because they couldn't complete the call. You get your quarter back. That said, yeah, my kids both have smartphones, but they're locked down. I cannot tell you how many times combined the two of them asked for Snapchat, for TikTok, for Facebook, for whatever the social media app, and the requests come through because we've got the parental controls on their iPhones and decline. Then they come begging. No, you don't get that. Why? Mom and dad said. That's why. Because kids and social media, Scott, I think it leads to all of the bad things you were just saying. That said, smartphones are fantastic tools. They're super handy in school. And, if the kids are using them for harassment, well, I think that speaks more to the parents or maybe the schools than it does the tool that's being abused in this case. But the one thing I really love about it is, I'm sure there's a Google Android version of this too, but years ago, Apple introduced a feature called Find My, which you can use your one Apple device to launch the Find My app and find your other missing device. You can make it make a sound. It'll show up on the map, all of that good stuff. And there's a real peace of mind where, as a parent, you can pull up Find My and see your kid is actually at school or actually not at school if they come up with some story. And this isn't helicopter parenting. This isn't this isn't being super hyper intrusive or controlling. It's just, wait a minute. They said this friend, but that story isn't lining up. Let me pull this up. I kind of wish my parents had that tool when I was a kid. I think that now. I wouldn't have thought that then.
Yeah.
But the point of this, Scott, is the tool is just that. It's a tool. A gun never killed anybody. A person had to aim and fire. A smartphone never took a picture it shouldn't have in the girls' locker room. A boy did that. So how these tools are used, that's really up to the parents and the character of the child than it is anything else.
Bill Whittle, in the Wall Street Journal story, it says, as of about 2022, that rural Colorado school district found that about half their student discipline issues had to do with smartphones. So it is apparently a constant distraction. They're also finding that parents are not waiting till the end of the day to convey messages to students that can wait. They think of something, they immediately text their student or their child, and that can be an interruption into what's going on because then the kid's looking at the phone. But Bill, the other thing that I immediately thought of when I saw this story was, well, as a parent, if there were like an active shooter situation at the school, wouldn't it be great to have your kid be able to phone out to either you or to the authorities? Wouldn't it be great to have voice contact? And they address this in the story. And one of the things they say, Bill, is that if the phone should ring or vibrate, this actually could be a bad thing for your kid who's trying to, hide under a desk or in a closet or something from an intruder.
Here, I'm over here.
Yeah, right over here. And so, again, not a simple question, and you get into issues of, parental control and state control. You get into issues of child safety and cyberbullying. I mean, back in the old days, we had to bully people face to face like some sort of primitive tribal people. But Bill, how do you wrestle with these competing factors, and is there a way to resolve that?
Yes, this is another argument that is very compelling in favor of private schools. Because you can say, we're going to ban cell phones in schools. And the parents say, but we want our kids to have cell phones during classes. And you can say, well, thank you very much for your application. And I'm sure you'll find a school that'll meet all of your needs, because we don't do the cell phone thing here. I grew up in Bermuda, and the British system is a little different. It's not exactly a private school. It's a public-private. It's a little weird. But one of the things that we did was we all had to wear uniforms. And the reason that we had to wear uniforms is because not wearing uniforms is really distracting. When I came to Florida, I realized I had to find something different to wear every day. People were making judgments about what you were wearing. They were making judgments about where you bought your clothes from. There's all of this distraction. It was also an all-boys school. That was also another source of basically getting the distraction out of the way of the education. It seemed for some bizarre reason that the British school system back in the 60s was focused on getting you to learn things, and that was the top priority. And everything that got in the way of that, they looked at as a problem that had to be overcome, and so they overcame it. The idea that I would be talking to a group of people, any people, but especially if I'm teaching somebody, and somebody looks down from what I'm talking about and checks their messages or something, I'm not teaching at a school like that. And it goes further than that. It goes to what my topic is this week, which we haven't recorded yet, so you'll find that out soon enough. But really, what it comes down to is you are enabling the attention deficit disorder that these kids have. If you can't conduct a 55-minute class or a 53-minute class or whatever it is, without kids checking their phones or messages or making comments on their latest Instagram post, then you've got a problem, and you're responsible for the problem. It's when you said the students weren't the problem with banning the phones, I thought, well, I'll bet it's the parents, and it is. And so this is why this generation is so badly miseducated. They don't have motor skills. This is a contagion. And if you're going to go to school to learn, there is a teacher there, and that teacher deserves your full respect and attention at all times. And there's no reason for cell phones to be there. If it turns out there's a shooter at a school, which is a lot less likely than people being distracted 24/7 in every other classroom in the entire country every other day, then the teacher can make a phone call. I don't buy that argument at all. In fact, flooding 9/11 with 10,000 calls is not exactly the answer to the crisis, and determining that your kid's priority would be to get in touch with mom and dad rather than finding a place to either barricade or hide. I don't buy any of that school shooter stuff. But ultimately, Scott, it's a question of respect, and it's a question of seriousness. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's if you allow cell phones in a class, you are not taking education seriously. That is not your primary objective.
Yeah, let me throw something in here, Scott, real quick. Just to be clear, my kids know that when the grown-ups are speaking, the phone goes down, and during class, it stays in the backpack. If we hear any reports that the phone is out during class, guess what? The phone doesn't go to school anymore.
Yeah, there you go.
Which, by the way, we've done more than once.
Good. That's very encouraging. Some of the statistics cited in this story include that there's an organization that somehow got data about notifications coming to teenagers' smartphones, and about 25% of the notifications on teenager smartphones are happening during school hours. A median of 43 minutes a day is teenagers using their phones at school. 43 minutes a day, mostly social media and messaging apps. And according to teacher reports, most of the texting is coming from parents. That parents are sending messages to their kids at school. I obviously, having run a Christian children's camp myself, where we would have about 150 young people on campus during a particular week, safety was my paramount concern. I was constantly sort of gaming out different threat possibilities and how we could deal with those, both in a preventative way and in a remediative way. And what would we do if thus and such happened? The kids at the camp, at least at that point, were not carrying around smartphones. Some of the counselors did in order to communicate. Rather than using walkie-talkies to interrupt everybody, we decided to let the senior counselors use cell phones. We had minimal problems with that. There a few issues came up with that. So I get the safety argument, but I'm with Bill, I think, on this, and Steve, is you get so little time of devoted instruction. It seems like they're at school a long time, but the actual instructional time is relatively limited. And wouldn't it be nice if they were actually focused on what they were supposed to be learning? If teachers want to say, hey, we're using the phones as a tool for education, that's another matter, but I think that brings in a whole bunch of other problems. It's like when schools started handing out laptop computers to kids, and I thought, I'll bet you a good 60 to 70% of the time those computers are being used for non-school purposes. Just a theory of mine. But I think we're better off keeping the phones out of schools. As Bill suggested, maybe the only way to do that is through private schools or homeschooling or charter schools. But I think what this says more than anything is that parents don't trust school leaders to be able to keep their kids safe, to be able to operate an atmosphere at school that's conducive to learning. And parents are basically saying, even though I'm sending my kid, I want to keep the safety line. It's like when you see people at the mall walking around with their kid handcuffed by that little curly wire to the parent's wrist. They are afraid to let their kids go. Part of that is the zeitgeist of this generation. Long gone are the days when my grandmother would send us out early in the morning to go play in the woods, and she wouldn't see us until lunch. And in the intervening 3 hours, she would have no idea where we were. Anywhere we could have been, we were miles away from home often, and somehow we made it back. those days are gone for most people. They can't even imagine that. It sounds insane when I say that, especially to young parents. But we need to get to a point where schools are for learning and the kids understand that there's something to be said for a place where you have focus. And one of the indicators of that focus is that you don't have your normal distractions near at hand. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.